calling the Concord Carlisle Regional School Committee meeting to order. Please note we're being recorded.
And we will bring the Concord Public School School Committee to order. It is August 21, 2020. Good morning, all.
Let's do a roll call. Wilson?
Here.
Rainey?
Present for both.
Booth?
Here.
Johnston here. Anderson?
Here.
Okay. Our primary, original reason for setting a meeting this morning was to have an executive session. In the process of our meeting on Tuesday, is it Tuesday? I think so. It runs together. We added a couple of things just to get some updates and maybe ask for some items to be clarified, if possible, for our Tuesday meeting relative to the opening. So why don't we see if there's any public comments? If you've got a comment, please raise your hand, and participants.
I'm seeing none at the present time, Wally.
So I do think I think we had a couple of pieces of correspondence since Tuesday.
Gosh,
I think they were, again, related to the opening and
yes, I think it was perhaps 3 in number. Forgive me, I didn't log them all in on a piece of paper, but 3 in number, and they did relate to reopening, correct?
right, and I think one of them had to do with the topic we have in our action items, vote on policies about masks. Interestingly, they're getting a little more detailed and specific as we get through this, and people have ideas about the more specific issues of reopening. So,
And that reminds us that, as with so many other things where we have to be highly responsible, as informed as possible, and have the capacity to make changes that even could relate to policies that are being put in place now, could in fact be enhanced or refined anytime. That's just the nature of it. We're going to have to accept that for a certain period of time.
yep. Correct. Okay, why don't we move on to reopening and task force updates. Laura, do you have things you want to update us on?
Yeah. It comes fast and furious right now. So I wasn't going to get into any great depth on any of these. I think we can follow up on Tuesday if you've got particular items of interest. We did hear from a combined communication from DPH and DESE. They've aligned the protocols for illness, which, remember, we looked at Tuesday night. So there's now some minor modifications to make, because we're really grateful that forgive me for wishing they had done this months ago, but they've now synced up. So we will tweak those so that they're aligned with the release that came out. We've built calendars and schedules for the teachers' return starting on Thursday, August the 27th. They'll be in professional days through the 3rd of September. We're holding webinars, one more this morning with the Concord Health Director and Public Health Nurse. We did one for teachers. We are doing 2 for parents this week. The second one is at 11 this morning. Very well attended the other night, about 100 people on the call. We will have COVID handbooks ready at each building by Monday. So I'll be starting to share those with the committee over the weekend for your review. So Tuesday night, they will help to inform that conversation. And then the expectation after that is we make any changes, and then they're available to the parent community.
So Lori, run that timetable by us again. We see handbook drafts.
Yep, by Monday you'll have
Weekend.
those. Yep.
We discuss them Tuesday, and presumably they are then released to the parent community Wednesday. Is that the time?
Depending on any revisions based on the conversation.
Thank you.
We've built the symptom screener in Aspen for all staff, parents for K-8 and high school students for the high school to log themselves in every morning an hour before school and self-report a lack of symptoms. They can certainly report symptoms there, which should cue them to stay home, and then they'll use the attendance line to call in. We're building a video so we can push that out to everybody to understand how to do it. It's very simple.
Lori, an example of what I'd like to learn about Tuesday, just by way of example, is who will be handling those screeners? Does it get triaged up to a nurse for problematic information that comes in and so on? Because this is the very detail I imagine that is going to underlie these handbooks and the actual operational procedures.
Correct.
So I certainly will be looking for a lot of detail, not to interfere with your prerogatives, but to be highly informed.
Sure, absolutely. We did get guidance from DESE and MIAA, which at the local level needs to be reviewed. We can start to do that Tuesday. I have a meeting along with Mike Mastrullo and Aaron Jonkis with the local level, district-wide regional districts that participate with us in the league. So we're all having conversations about what we think is safe. So I think this conversation is going to go on a couple weeks. So we're going to want to go slow there. I think we need to keep saying to the community that we aren't exactly sure what's happening yet, because
I just asked a question. So at this time, no preseason, no formal activities of any kind.
right. The earliest anything can start is September 18th, and that will be with our permission once you all have had a chance to talk through where we at. I would like to suggest we maybe not do too much of that on Tuesday. I think the district meeting that we have on Friday of next week will be really important to hear what other districts are thinking. I'm already hearing concerns from other communities as well. So,
are we able to get any preliminary guidance to the groups that are meeting now that may not have coaches among them, but certainly as recently as yesterday, very much look like organized groups on some of our fields with adults in the mix?
yeah, those would be the youth sports that are using our fields.
But there are high school students in those groups, and so I'm just curious, are we beginning to introduce some safety related information to those groups before what looks like formal becomes formal practice?
So those groups have had to submit safety plans to use any of the fields in town, including ours. So I expect they're following what they've submitted under the governor's phased rollout. And then we released yesterday through Aaron Jonkis and Mike Mastrullo a preliminary statement that said there's no assumptions to be made as of yet. MIAA's done their part. Now the local districts are going to do their review.
Good. So Dr. Hunter, I want you to understand that what might appear to the audience as me putting you on the spot is indeed intended to be us putting ourselves on the spot, this school committee and this administration, in order to present as much as we can, as frequently as we can, because this thing's moving. So I would want any listener to understand what's motivating this.
Yep, absolutely. And it'll be helpful to hear your questions today so I can bring them back in a thorough way on Tuesday, for sure. And then the last piece would be an update on the testing option. I don't know if you want to do that at the onset of the conversation or later on. So I'll leave that to get some feedback maybe from the chairs. I did have another conversation with another company that could offer us a free option for staff. So
I guess my answer would be if it's going to lay more groundwork for any decision making Tuesday, then yeah, if you can front load it or headline it now, that'll be helpful. And then the other piece, which the audience may be interested in, is the rapid response testing that the state is now offering up.
sure, absolutely. So I'll start with that piece. The state yesterday released that they would send rapid response teams out to any schools that have outbreaks, just as they have with the nursing homes. That would allow for easy access to broad-based testing, including asymptomatic people and kids, staff, which would be a really, that's a reassuring piece to know that that's going to be available, because if anyone's diagnosed positive, we would want to be able to respond really quickly with a broad-based set of testing. And based on our previous conversations, we're finding some options, but to know that that's one phone call away will make things much simpler. So then the other piece that I just wanted to add an update on is more in terms of proactive testing, which we've talked about the last couple of meetings. I had a phone call yesterday with Ginkgo. They're a biotech company out of Cambridge. And what they've decided to offer to all school districts in Massachusetts, they're on the early end of this offer to the district, so it'll get broader based next week, is their saliva test is what they're offering, is to test all staff prior to re-entry to school for what they're calling your baseline. And the way they're viewing it, certainly none of us are going to say this is the same as testing everyone. However, they're equating it to some of the processes that have gone on in the nursing homes, which the state outlined and actually funds, where the staff is tested, they were tested at a baseline, and then a pool of them are tested regularly, not the entire staff, but 30%. And what it does is just continue to provide indicators to the leaders as to what's going on potentially in the nursing home. The actual residents are only tested if there's an outbreak of symptomatic pieces. So they're offering it for free for all staff ahead of the school year starting. Then there'd be options to continue with them if we wanted to. It would start initially when we were to pay. Their test is $80 a test until about mid-October. They've just received a $40 million grant from NIH. So they're expecting their costs to, because of the subsidy, to drop down to under $30 a test once we get into October. And their suggestion would be that you could test, you know, that sample of 30% of the staff or so every 2 weeks, which is obviously a very different cost factor than what we've been discussing at a large scale. So that's the newest option on the table.
Like everything else, this is very complicated. The reason this approach works in nursing homes is that the staff are mobile and the patients are not mobile.
Correct.
Whereas we go into a school and the students are mobile. So we can't, unfortunately, to make it very difficult for us, we can't equate nursing home activity and exposures with school because of the nature of patient movement versus student movement.
Yeah, that's true.
I think the other aspect of that is in a nursing home, the staff is more exposed than to multiple people for significant periods of time, more throughout the day than the residents. Whereas you could almost argue it's the opposite in a school. I think that teachers have an ability to maintain their distance better than some of the, I think we will find better than students, because students are gonna, you know, there's this magnetic pull toward, oh, those two of my friends are, I'm gonna go over there. And now all of a sudden there's 3 people in a 8-foot square space. You know, and I guess I still question the expenditure of any money on anything that isn't, you know, really clearly going to provide us some true benefit in keeping the spread away.
So you do actually have a free option here that we didn't have to, if nothing else, we could for free test the staff as they return. I was on with a number of other superintendents yesterday, and some districts are doing that, even paying for it. So I do think there's, whether it's, it's not the perfect fix. There does seem to be some mindset that maybe some testing is better than nothing, which is unfortunately where we're at. So
the testing prior to mid-October or prior to opening would be all staff and faculty.
right.
And there certainly would be an opt-out provision.
We could either bargain with the leaders
Forgive me,
or-
I'm sorry. I meant opt-out by individuals.
Right. So there's two choices. One is to bargain with the associations if we wanted to insist or ask that everyone be tested, or yes, it's voluntary.
So, and a third approach is to get their sentiments, the teacher groups and the faculty groups, as to whether they want this as an opportunity. And then they, with us, would initiate moving ahead through you.
Of course.
So I think,
I would say we would do that either way.
yeah.
I've let them know that the opportunity came up yesterday, just so they would not be hearing it for the first time.
Wally, would it be appropriate to ask through Dr. Hunter that we seek those responses from the bargaining units by Monday morning? I know that's tight, but it doesn't force anything on anybody. It just gives us a sense of sentiment.
I think you'd want to give at least a business day, so they'd have it to us by.
Okay.
And I don't, that seems a little tight, but I was going to ask the question of Dr. Hunter, is this offer, the free offer for the initial test, is there a time constraint here? Is it sort of a first come, first served? If they only offered it to certain districts, if we wait till next Friday, are we, they're going to pick up the phone and say, sorry, you missed the boat?
Yeah, we're on the early end of this right now. I think next week they're going to do a broader outreach, and it could get harder. So that's all I don't know that I could be more specific. They certainly feel that they have a large capacity and will not be overwhelmed by everyone starting to come on around the same time. But right now we're one of the first districts talking to them, so I can't say for sure if it would.
Are there any reasons? Are there any reasons we wouldn't take advantage of that then? If it's
yeah,
free?
that's where I'm going, Alexis. Let's look at what are the potential downsides. I haven't found any yet in my thinking.
Yeah.
Neither.
I mean, I think what I was going to recommend was, do we want to give Lori just a nod that go ahead and have a conversation with the associations and with the company that we're interested in, see if there are any roadblocks that develop in that secondary conversation.
I think that's a safe approach, because if this test is something that an individual does not want, they're not going to be compelled to take it. It's data in a population that can't conceivably misuse that data, if you follow my thinking there. And negatives would never mean a false sense of security on the part of our faculty and staff, to my thinking.
I think I would leave open whether it's voluntary or not to the discussion with between the superintendent and the associations. We may find that the teachers would like it to be mandatory.
Yeah,
Dr. Hunter, is there any, is this just the initial testing, the free testing, is this just a convenience factor? Because the state right now is providing through the program Stop the Spread free testing to anyone that is asymptomatic. The test, I tested myself because I traveled out of the state. The test results came back in one day. The testing lab is the MIT lab for that testing. So would that be the second option for the families and the faculty staff to provide, or are we or is there just a test kit that would be, it would be a convenience that they would be receiving a test kit in their mailbox?
Why don't we, if you could sort of take these under advisement, Lori, and just talk to us about it on Tuesday after. Now that there's really an option that we could do conveniently for teachers, that's cost effective and it's free. And then just come back and sort of give us a heads up after the conversation, because this is really important to get straight with the unions before we get too far down the road in this.
Dr. Hunter, I want to be clear that I'm not necessarily sure that if free testing is available statewide to anybody. I didn't think that was a true statement.
It is a true statement. I checked it. I sent the information to Dr. Lori Hunter. There is a program, and it will be actually expanded to allow the school safe return to in-person learning. One of the location is not that far from Concord Carlisle. It's 20 minutes at the Lawrence COVID testing site. If you walk up to get the test, there is no wait. You walk up, you give them your information, and the reporting, as I said, is within one day I had my results. If you want to sit in your car, it takes about an hour to an hour and a half to get the test. There is no appointment necessary. Children can get the test. Parents will be receiving the results through the portal. There's no cost. The only time that they would process your insurance, and it's still, the test would be free if you had symptoms. So I send in the information to Dr. Hunter so she can share it with the families and the faculty. There is no work that needs to be done on part of the school doing this if we would be to require testing. And it's free and it's convenient.
What's unusual, Dr. Hunter, about the Cambridge offer is that it's portable, they bring it to us, and that it is also free. Do you need, in your estimation, do you need our authority in your back pocket between now and Tuesday night so that if you wanted to make a commitment or a tentative commitment with this organization, you'd be empowered to do so?
I would say so. Yeah, I think that would probably be the best way to go, and you could qualify it pending agreement with the unions. I'd rather get the placeholder in with the company, and we could always, I think it's easier to get the placeholder in and cancel if for some reason we decide not to, than to wait it and then hope we can still get in.
As do I.
Does that make sense?
So why don't we get, when we get to action items, we'll ask for a motion.
Good.
Thank you. Great. Those are my updates.
All
Not
right.
bad since Tuesday night.
Yeah, you're touching the top of a big iceberg here, and I know we have a 10 o'clock goal for winding up this public meeting, which I think we can accomplish. Give us a sense, Dr. Hunter, of your finger on the pulse for faculty and staff. People doing okay?
I think overall, I won't deny that there is certainly anxiety and worry among some. We're trying to really work closely with the union leadership. We are working really closely with the union leadership. Much of our approach has been to address concerns as they've been brought up and be really responsive. I feel actually good that we've done that. I think we've also been trying to really work with individuals about their own needs and their own level of concern. And that ranges everything from their own medical needs or medical needs of a family member through childcare issues, because with all districts essentially in a hybrid mode, that is certainly a big piece of this puzzle to figure out. So, I've had a lot of access to staff over the last few months, and I think we're at a place where overall we're feeling ready to return. And the unknown is kind of just what's looming there. We've got all the plans in place, and I think till we're in that next phase, it's a little difficult to get over that last piece. But a number of people have expressed a lot of energy about being back with the kids. So I'm anxious to have everyone back on engaged with us in a more formal way starting Thursday. I think that's exciting because right up until now, it's been either as we see each other or on a weekly voluntary staff meeting, which I have to say, we've been holding those for over almost 6 weeks now. And despite how being voluntary, we are, engaged with almost everybody. So it's been a summer of not really losing connection with people, but making sure they feel connected and informed and their concerns are expressed. And an example today, the revisions of the face mask policy that I'm bringing you today are a result of some of that conversation and hearing, I'm so close to everything right now. I know what it might be intended to be, and I need the objective opinion that, if it doesn't read the way it's intended, it was important to hear that. So I think the communication's really open, and that's the goal, is to continue that. And that actually is going to get a little easier as we're more formally together starting at the end of next week.
So this school committee hasn't zoomed into every staff and faculty member's living room to communicate at the high level and the frequent level you have, but we are well aware of the sacrifices they've made through the summer to get us where we are today, and we are grateful. We're deeply grateful. We've got a long way to go in a very few days, but we've done remarkable things before.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Do we want to move on to the policies?
I just have a few, because I thought, originally I thought this meeting was to discuss questions or issues we had,
Correct.
to raise them up.
Raise them.
Yeah.
More than discuss, yeah.
Correct, okay. So I think a lot of my questions would be resolved with the manuals, I'm thinking. But I'm particularly interested in open campus at the high school, attendance at the high school.
Can you just expand on that a little bit? So
open campus, will it be open to all students to leave the
actually the attendance piece more than open.
Oh, attendance. So if you are supposed to be in person, is it acceptable for you to stay home?
Okay.
And that's going to, if it is, that's going to be a challenge for the whole screening process.
Yeah, I mean, the answer is, unless you're a fully remote student, yes, you're expected to be in person.
And even if your teacher is teaching remotely.
That is where we're at right now. So
Okay.
we're going to clarify all that. That'll be in the handbook for sure.
Okay. And then just, I did send you some questions about the 9th grade orientation, which it sounds like, all those issues will be resolved, are my concerns. It's a big gathering.
Yep.
For, probably like what, 130 to 140.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Which they won't be in that size group, obviously. So
Yeah.
we'll bring the details Tuesday.
Okay. And then maybe just a little better understanding of what remote learning will look like. And then how would we then pivot to all remote if we need to?
Good.
That's it.
There is going to be a more top-down, explicit nature about student behavior expectations and compliance expectations than is our norm. And I think we're going to have to over-communicate some
So
of
I'll
these
bring you,
functions.
we're putting together drafts of the contracts we're going to send home.
Yeah.
So I'll bring you those for Tuesday also.
I sent Dr. Hunter upwards of 4 dozen items that were just top of mind that I thought would get spelled out for students and parents in the handbooks. And she and I can clarify any of those offline, but I think they're all questions or need for updates that are probably ones all of you would expect, wouldn't be surprised by. We're down to logistics now, and still hanging on to curriculum expectations as well, but a lot of logistics.
Yes.
Dr. Hunter, is there a plan for the faculty of the high school to sort of start that communication campaign that we have seen in college admissions and colleges during the pandemic, where it was not Zoom calls, it was webinars when parents would be able to ask questions, and basically a walkthrough what is going to be expected, what's going to happen in classrooms, what supports for students will look like. This sort of information, is that going to be in the works? Is the administration and teachers planning to do that?
Are you asking at a school level or at a teacher level? I'm just
both, because I guess, you know, the kids already will have this schedule, so it's probably much easier to understand even what the part of technology is going to look like, right? Where you're going to be finding your homework, that those organization pieces that are so important to success in the high school.
Right. So we'll be doing the school level pieces of that over the next week to 2 weeks. On September 8th, that very first day, that is all remote for everyone. The teachers will all be meeting with each of their sections, and that will be the beginning of those discussions. It'll be, you know, we've talked a lot about this. Every year, even in a normal time, you spend the first few weeks of the year getting kids into the routines and helping them know how the structure is going to work. So all of that is the same. The difference is the structures are different, and it will include all the details of hybrid and technology and all the advancements we've made over the summer of really organizing Google Classroom and Seesaw at the younger grades. We'll be rolling all of that out so that actually I think we're going to be in a good place for how the kids are starting to organize themselves. So the teachers will be doing a lot of that very explicitly as we bring the kids back that first few days and into the first couple weeks.
Thank you.
And another question, are we building in a sort of a feedback mechanism to have a feeling, to invite the families to sort of give the feedback of how the remote learning is going, how is, you know, how the protocols and how things are happening, you know, going at the school? Is there going to be a mechanism for a feedback from families that doesn't feel like, you know, someone is complaining, right? But like really a conversation in this strange time of a pandemic.
So maybe Dr. Hunter, you can speak briefly to that, knowing that we're going to go into greater detail.
Yeah, so absolutely. I think the piece is just figuring out what the best timing is. We'd want to get up and going before we ask too soon. So that'll be but certainly we believe in that feedback and we want it more than ever.
All right.
Dr. Hunter, I just have a question about at the high school. I was trying to get a sense of how many students on average are not in a class at any given time?
Depends on the time of day. Lunch is obviously the most because those kids are assigned to lunch, plus there may be some kids on a study block, that kind of thing. Mr. Mastrullo can bring us that data. I don't have it off the top of my head outside of the lunch block, so let's ask him to bring that on Tuesday.
Great.
Yeah, Lori, it might be helpful to bring a sample 9th grade schedule and a sample senior, junior schedule.
A lot of our kids, because they're so engaged with the band and some of those courses, will have no open blocks other than lunch. In fact, we've had to tell them they have to take lunch. often it is more the ninth grade who will have a study. The underclassmen tend to be with the study block. So we'll bring you some better overviews, more specific.
Lori, do we have updated numbers of how many families are electing to stay remote? I know that you extended that deadline through today, but.
Yeah, I'm going to bring it to you Tuesday, so you have it as
Great.
of Tuesday. There's still some ins and outs going on there as families. It's a hard decision. It's a hard.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll bring you as of where we are on Tuesday.
And then what would be useful Tuesday, I think, too, would be is there a critical information piece that is the crux for family decision-making about remote or hybrid? Or is it a mix of all the factors that drive these decisions? If there's one that seems to continually loom large, that'd be interesting to, if not helpful, to learn about.
Anecdotally, and being in touch with some of them as they ask questions, I wouldn't say there's one thing. I think more information definitely helps as they feel more informed about how structures and safety protocols will work. That certainly has mattered. And for others, I don't know if there's one specific thing. I would say if there's a pattern, the more information we've seen some families decide to stay and come to school. But then there's some that are going the other way too. I don't think there's a pattern.
Okay.
But I think to your question, the more informed they are, the better, which is why I think the release of the handbooks will be helpful.
And will those be released through building by building communication networks?
Correct. The principals will release those after you've
Okay. Other questions that would help us, and in particular help Dr. Hunter and her team prepare for the Tuesday where we do a deep dive?
I have asked all the administrators to join us, so I'm not speaking to details that they've been working on. So we'll be sure we have a lot of informed leaders available to you.
I would ask, if I may, that the committee get questions or comments, whatever you need to get to Dr. Hunter, get them to her now, because I think there's sufficient information Tuesday that the meeting will run away from us if she doesn't have the opportunity to organize the questions in such a way that they can be answered without us wandering around these many topics.
Yeah, that'd be helpful for sure.
Dr. Hunter, I was not able to attend the walkthrough, unfortunately. Was there a video maybe made of what the building and what the preparations look like? Or
we did not video those. Those were a little less formal, but there will be pieces coming out from the principals. Some videos in different formats. Remember the one that I did back at the end of July when the reopening plan, we've got some of those coming out from the middle and elementary schools. So it'll be a range of ways we communicate all of the information.
And Dr. Hunter, I know we always talk about well-being of our students, but there is also the part of well-being and mental health for our teachers. The pandemic definitely has hit everybody very hard, created a lot of anxieties. In Carlisle, at least, we've one of our members was able to find free mental health services for teachers. That would that be something that Concord teachers would be interested in receiving?
So we've talked some on this. They certainly have the employee assistance program available to them. We remind them of that fairly often. We did a lot in the spring. We probably are due to do it again. And certainly the well-being of teachers is a huge part of our return process with them next week, as it has been all summer, which is why we've stayed so close to be sure we're trying to support them and hear what their questions and concerns are. So yes, Eva, we should be open to any ideas. The administrative team and I met with an outside psychologist who's supporting leadership teams all over the state right now on this. He's someone familiar to us, so that was very beneficial. And just to have an hour and a half to talk on just even our own needs and the struggles we're having, and have him say it's really normal that you'd be having those feelings during such a challenging time was really, really helpful. So.
All right, Wally, I wonder if we might move on to policy with our remaining time and then the testing action item.
Can I quickly, excuse me, can I quickly give an update? You guys wanted to know on what was happening with Carlisle, and
Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to let you know that we voted on a calendar. We're opening September 15th, and we are going with a slow roll of a hybrid approach that starts very soft with hybrid half days for K through 8, leading up to hybrid full days for K through 8, and then with an ultimate goal of eventually getting to full days for the whole school by mid to late October.
And when you say full days, mid to late October, you mean full days in-house?
Full days in-house.
Got it. Ambitious goal. Let's hope we pull it off. Yeah, good.
Thank you. Okay. Court, who do you or Lori want to?
Well, what I would propose, tell me, Dr. Hunter, what you think. I think that the policies EBC supplemental, that interim policy that's rather general in nature, the remote learning policy and the remote learning addendum are straight ahead, uncontroversial, kind of generic, which is fine. I don't mean that as a pejorative, but I think we can make quick work of those unless people have questions or concerns, because I think we're going to need a few minutes on the face coverings, and I think even the face coverings may get an update in the future, just given how many introductions of new data have come in just in a matter of days since we last met, since Tuesday. So while I propose that we entertain a motion to approve the policy that is EBC supplemental, to be titled General parentheses interim close parentheses policy on COVID related issues. Then let's see if I can pull it up quickly here. Sorry. Let me get my agenda here. Where'd it go? The next one is the policy IHBHE entitled Remote Learning. And thirdly, approval for IHBHE-E Remote Learning Addendum. Might there be a motion to adopt those policies?
Is there going to be any further discussion? Just a quick question.
Yes, as soon as we get a motion on the floor.
So move for both.
Second for Concord. Somebody second for the region, please.
Second for region.
Thank you.
Okay. And do we have discussion on these proposals?
I just had a quick question. Unfortunately, I couldn't ask my question at the last meeting. I had a parent reach out and ask what is the purpose of the graduation requirements? How does that factor into how would that affect special education students on IEP and their whether graduation or phasing out of the district?
Can you direct us to the portion of the policy you're referring to, please? Is this this is the first policy, the EBC supplemental, and the reference to file IKF reading currently in accordance with guidance from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and modifications to current regulation or law, the superintendent may propose, subject to the approval of the school committee, modifications to the policy of the district regarding graduation requirements. I read that as if dire circumstances require Dr. Hunter to bring a recommendation to us, this declares that that might happen. Is that an accurate interpretation?
Yeah, and I think it would be specific to certain things that are just really maybe impossible. And I guess we haven't found one of those yet, great, thankfully. You know, last spring, I think the question became community service. Could the kids find enough ways to finish that? Or we didn't have to waive it because either so many of them were already done, or they did have other ways to do it. That one was certainly one on my mind last spring when we closed. The other one that I think comes to mind the most is all the changing pieces with the state in terms of the competency determination. They did waive that this year, and because it's law, we didn't have to make specific changes because the umbrella is much bigger and beyond us. But I think that might be another place that will continue to, it's going to continue to move. There's very little doubt of that, I think. So my response then on the special education question, MASC just made note that certainly some students are ineligible for services once they've gotten a high school diploma. And I actually think, although it might have read as a parental concern, perhaps, I think it's just the opposite. I think it's trying to remind us that if we get too lenient, we may end up having students not receiving services they really still need. So I think it's meant to be a reminder that the two can be connected.
Got it. That certainly clarifies it for me. Eva, what you're thinking?
I think the second part regarding the special education gives a little clarification. It, you know, those changes are keep popping up constantly, and the speed just really catches us off guard to understand the implications on some of these families' placements and rights. So thank you for the clarification.
Other questions, discussion? Hearing none. Wally, do you want to do the roll on this?
Sure. Rainey,
Aye for both.
Booth,
Aye for both.
Wilson,
Aye for region.
Mustafi,
Mustafi for region.
Johnston, aye for both.
Okay. So with that, we get to the policy that you'll find linked up from your agenda, and there's yet another update on EBCFA face coverings. I think this one is still in play, but I think we can get something into place now so that we can begin very clearer notifications. Dr. Hunter, do you want to speak to the changes? Do you want me to do anything here?
Why don't I start and then fill in whatever I don't mention.
Okay.
What's happened since we last met? Two pieces that we could have looked at Tuesday. We ran out of time, but then yesterday I met with the nurse leaders and Susan Rask, health director, and the public health nurse, and we gave it one more look even in that with that group of people. So based on feedback that I think was very legitimate, and I'm grateful that when we do put these out publicly, people are attending to it. And on this one especially, I am so close to this one that I know what I think it says, but let's be sure it actually says that. So there was language here. You'll see everything I put in yellow on the version that's posted is what was previously there in terms of exemptions to the face covering policy. And it really struck that perhaps this was, I'm sorry, everything in red is what was there previously. The yellow is the suggested language for today. So everything in red appeared almost too loose based on our intent that it is a very, very rare exception. And in my mind, it's rare enough that I'm even thinking of a particular population of very young students with special needs that might be accepted. And I'm still not sure I can find a setting where I would expect that that would be the case at the high school. So I think it just, when I reread it, given the questions I was being asked, it seemed important to make it a stronger statement. So the yellow is what I'm recommending, and removal of what's in red. So the sentence is now, in terms of exemptions, would be that a limited number of students with very specific and previously identified needs may be exempt from wearing face coverings. A written letter to the superintendent supported by a physician's statement and agreement from the Board of Health is required for consideration. That feels different to me than saying we need a note from the doctor, parents. It just wasn't tight enough. So that's the recommendation there. And then we looked at under the very few places in the school day where you might remove masks, certainly a mask break while eating or drinking. And then physical education classes was listed there, and we tightened that up as well by adding during outdoor physical education classes with prior submission of safety plan by teacher to the administration. So we want that to be really thought through and something that the administrators are part of, and the planning is made, and only outdoors, not inside. So those are the two recommendations.
And which link gets us to that one? Because the agenda that I'm looking at doesn't have the highlighted references you're talking about, which I have seen, but I'm just curious, is this something we need to pull up for?
It's interesting. There's two places on the same page you can link on the school committee page. If you're under school committee and you use that calendar,
Yeah, so it is linked to today's
it's
agenda.
linked to today's.
On
I think
the,
it's so recently linked, you might need a refresh depending on
okay.
when you pulled it up. Because I pulled it up, I had it up when I came into the office. It was already, this page was already up and didn't have it. If I click on it now, it's there.
Magic.
Okay.
Oh,
Try to refresh that. It is attached to the agenda. Hopefully you can all access it that way.
All right. So questions, I've got a couple, but I'm content to hold off for a moment.
yeah, why don't we let this percolate a little bit and come back to us based on the work that superintendent's doing. Does that make sense?
Are you proposing we not move it today? I'm sorry, Wally, I don't.
Do you think it's in its final state, Lori?
Well, there's one more piece that I think is of note. We've had a lot of discussion. Duke had released a study which the media presented, and this is one of the greatest challenges right now, is that, you know, research is coming to the public through the media and the institutions are not maybe as caught up. So, and sometimes the study is not everyone agrees with it, but there was a study out of Duke with the gaiters being less effective, the pull-up face coverings. I had already, because it was breeding quite a bit of concern among those of us in the schools, I had made somewhat of an executive decision to start letting families know we were not likely going to allow those, which has gotten me a little feedback, I would admit, that not everyone agrees with that. So I guess that's the question, because some places have taken that Duke study that was in the media about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and added that to their face covering policies. Again, I was erring on the side of being just very conservative, given the concerns I was hearing, to just say that we weren't going to have those in the schools. But if the committee feels in agreement with that, it probably should go here as well.
I'm prepared to accept the fact that we are dealing with data from different sources that is not always perfectly aligned, and we're going to have to do the best we can with what we have. I think we could get this right by Tuesday, or righter in the following ways. If we, for example, if we were to not use any language around the apparent lower efficacy of bandanas and fleece coverings and so on, it could take the form of simply presenting from a reputable governmental source like CDC the recommended coverings. Instead of dwelling too much on what is inappropriate, we could focus on what is appropriate. CDC does, for example, say masks with exhalation valves or vents should not, capitalize, not be worn, etc. This might require a little more work, so that when it lands in those handbooks, we're not scrambling hours later to tighten it up, because I do think we know that N95s are the best and they're not available, that 3-ply surgical poly is number 2, and so on, and that we're not going to find fleece neck warmers on that list at all. So I think we might want to spend some more time on this. Lori and I have spent some time on this, and certainly with her health experts. We might even debate, and I'm curious about this, Lori, the notion that we're talking about face coverings. Is that a term that's too broad when we really want face masks for infection suppression? So even the title, face covering and face mask, are different. I want to note that for our work over the next couple of days, if we don't move this one today. Third and finally, I'm going to ask you very pointedly, Dr. Hunter, are you sure you want to take on the management responsibility of handling this kind of written letter? Could it not go to a building level principal? I want to, I want to help you stay at the strategic leadership level.
Yeah, and the reason we, the reason for the suggestion is the sense of how very critically looked at it's going to be.
Okay, yeah, I get that. Yeah, it has a level of import that can't get any higher when it lands on your desk. I do get that. Okay, just want to be mindful that.
Yeah, I expect very little in terms of people looking to opt out. I think the strength of this statement is really, really important. But I also, just in what we're hearing and the the way we're interacting with the community right now, I actually think by and large, people are going to cooperate and we're not going to have a lot of appeals. But what we want to do is that should we get them, we're really set up to make very limited exceptions, if any, which I think this starts to do that.
Got it. Okay.
Dr. Hunter, as you modify the language in the mask policy, are you making sure that it's still in accordance with the references, legal or otherwise?
Yeah, we need to that's a good point, Sarah. We should do a double check on that. I think we're okay, but we should do that between now and Tuesday, make sure.
Yeah, for example, we couldn't say the source is Maxi. We could say the source is adapted from Maxi, but it's not a direct one-for-one anymore.
Right.
To your point.
A good thought.
Dr. Hunter, if it helps, the pediatricians, the pediatric groups actually rolled out a picture of the mask that are not allowed in their offices for the pediatric patients. So this has been done early in the summer, and they rolled it out so people have a visual idea of which masks will not be allowed because they whether they have valves or they are not providing any barrier. So would we be able to send you that information? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, I'm sure. I think that could be very helpful in the handbooks to really get that specific.
And it might even enable some links that Dr. Hunter or her principals would be considering. So we do know that physical distancing and masks are above and beyond all other measures, what's going to help us get through this and keep schools functioning. So there's few things more important than clarity and compliance here.
And especially just in terms of the outcome here is removal from the school building. So it's really important. This is worth the time as far as I'm concerned.
This school committee member is prepared to see that that's enforced.
Yeah.
Unequivocally.
Absolutely.
And Dr. Hunter, I think we need to be prescriptive because if we say not this, not, then they're going to say, well, what about that? Or what about this?
Yeah.
The other thing is, I think we need to be very clear about our expectations when students are outside.
Yep.
That we prefer that they keep their masks on.
Absolutely.
The
Yeah.
default is, well, I'm 5 feet away, or I'm 7, or 4. Oops. So I just think it's easier.
We're going to have to be very specific about that because the mask breaks are all outside. We're not doing mask breaks inside. Those are all outside. So there's going to be a certain set of expectations for the mask break.
Mhm.
You have to be 6 feet apart once that mask is off. But then I think you're right. We want to clarify that just because you're outside doesn't mean you should take the mask off, which was part of the PE change we made there.
Yep.
As well.
If masks could speak, they would be saying, this is on my face because I care about you. Yours is on your face because you care about me. This is a big exercise in community here. Yeah. And sacrifice for the good of all. Because these are a nuisance. We all know. Other questions or comments? So we will bring this one back in such a way that it is clarified in terms of what are deemed appropriate protective coverings or masks, and we get the references right, and toss around again one more time the idea, does the titling face mask or face covering make a difference to us? Okay.
Thank you.
Are we ready to adjourn?
We have one testing motion. I wonder if we might have a motion
right.
to provide Dr. Hunter with the authority to proceed with agreements with the.
I wrote something down. You want me just to read it?
Yeah, thank you, Wally. Sorry.
Good.
Go ahead.
Can we have a motion for both committees that the school committee support superintendent's engagement with Ginkgo Bioworks regarding free faculty and staff-wide testing and COVID-19 testing, subject to positive discussion with teachers unions?
I would ask that you change that, Wally.
Okay.
Can I speak to it before it's on the floor?
Sure.
To cover all the units.
Yeah, good point.
And non-union as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So subject to positive discussions with staff member groups.
Perfect. Thank you. So moved for both.
Second for both.
Rainey,
Aye for both.
Booth,
Aye for both.
Wilson,
Aye for region.
Duffy,
Mustafi for region.
Johnston, aye for both. Okay. Does anybody have anything they want to add before we move to executive session? Okay. The Concord School Committee and Concord Carlisle Regional School Committee will enter into executive session under Purpose 3 of the Open Meeting Law to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may be a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and not to return to open session.
Move for both.
Second for both.
Rainey,
Aye for both?
Booth,
Aye for both.
Wilson,
Aye for region.
Mustafi. Mustafi. Johnston, aye for both. Motion carries. Well, everybody get the link to the executive session. Great. See you there in a minute.
Very good. Thank you all.